All right, well, let's talk more about Labor's carbon plan with the Environment Editor at The Australian, Graham Lloyd. Welcome to the show, Graham.
Hi, Caleb.
So obviously we're talking about $75 a tonne if you want to emit more carbon dioxide than you're allowed to, and a 5% reduction each year is what the government's asking for. 5% is a pretty significant ask, isn't it? I mean, particularly the big emitters, will they have any chance of getting anywhere near achieving that?
Well, they've been given a way to achieve it without having to actually cut their emissions by buying permits and what have you. But what we're seeing here is, look, that we've made a legislative commitment to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by a large amount, and now they have to do something about it. The safeguards mechanism is the plan, and really the significant part of it is it extends the pain past the electricity generators to other sections of industry where they have to reduce emissions as well. That includes the gas producers, coal producers, aluminium makers, steel producers. So it's going to have the sort of cost impact that we're seeing electricity is about to be shunted onto the industrial sector as well. And the great hope is that industries that are developed around sequestrating carbon through tree planting and land management will somehow offset that cost. But it's a high wire act.
Well, surely the cost will ultimately end up with the consumer. Like, you know, the person who's sucking the carbon out of the atmosphere in trees and whatever, they get these credits that they can then sell to people like AGL and Origin and gas producers. But surely the cost of buying those credits is just going to end up with you and me when we pay our power bills.
Absolutely, and not only power bills, everything that is produced will have a component of sort of leaving the carbon in it. And this is pretty dangerous territory. What we're seeing is a transition to a lower emissions economy on a global scale that is inherently inflationary. So this isn't only happening in Australia, this is happening everywhere, and it's going to feed industrial costs and unit of production costs right through the global economy. What this has produced is a blowback in places starting in Europe where they're saying, well, if we're going to compete with other countries, they have to do the same as us, so we'll put up trade barriers and tariffs. The Albanese government yesterday said, look, it's open to considering this as well. The US has said, well, they will look at a carbon border adjustment too. So it's a pretty slippery slope that what starts as, you know, an understandable thing to protect local industry can quickly become the nightmare of restrictive trade that Australia's always argued to fight against.
Well, who ends up being the big winners and the big losers out of all of this, do you think?
Well, it depends on what level you look at it. Some people would think, well, the big winners are everybody because emissions are reduced. Some believe, well, that's not the case and there's no cost-benefit analysis in doing it. But the big losers are going to be the average consumer who doesn't have the funds to adopt the new technologies to protect themselves. And the big winners are going to be the financial class who will regulate what people do, inspect how they do it, and devise a whole new suite of products to milk what is going to be a pretty large gravy train from industry and government.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, you know, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And obviously you've had the Greens and the Coalition already come out and say that they're against it, obviously for very different reasons. Is there any sense that there might actually be some legislative trouble here?
Oh, I think undoubtedly, and the evidence of that is that the government went away to think about it. It had a consultation process. It came back and it's got another consultation process. So what was announced isn't necessarily what we're going to get from the middle of the year. And even then, when it's legislated, the Greens, who hold the balance of power, they're not interested in giving oil and gas and coal companies credits to do anything. They think that they should reduce production. They shouldn't cover off their emissions, which kind of illustrates that it's really not about reducing emissions globally. It's about having a world view on what the global economy should look like.
Oh, but seriously, Graham, very quickly, what would happen if you didn't have those carbon credits there? Like if you forced these companies to reduce their emissions by 5% a year, or you get hit with a massive fine, the consequences would be disastrous, wouldn't they?
Well, ultimately, you end up with a carbon tax at a very high rate that would probably be set by the Greens ultimately, but it would be very, difficult for business to really accommodate a structure with no boundaries on it, and that's what you would have. So I think there's a lot of politics in this that still has to be fought, and it's, as you say, it's really every step is going to add costs to everyday mum and dads.
Graham, Lloyd, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.